All right, and we are live, everybody. Now, today we have a super special episode because tonight we're welcoming, as you guys know, the King of Australia, Mr. Jake Rattlesnake himself, the man that keeps you guys armed and dangerous. What's up, Jake? Uh, Thank you so much for being on Project Geopod, man. Seriously, this is great to have you. I already told you this backstage, but I just wanted to tell you again because
Yeah, it's my pleasure,
yeah,
man. I really
yeah,
appreciate
yeah,
it.
yeah, dude. Because like to be perfectly honest, man, I've been following your content for a good while now, and I know you've achieved a lot with your YouTube channel and building it up nearly to almost 1 million subscribers. I think you're around 300,000 away from a million.
Yeah,
Um,
about 240,000 away at the moment. So getting
yeah,
close.
dude, super impressive, dude. Very impressive. And some of your content's actually some of the stuff that I would definitely consume when kind of doing research on political topics, etc. So for a good while, like your channel has always been kind of like the go-to for me. So
Oh, cool, man. It's
d-
awesome. I
d-
appreciate it. It's I like to sort of introduce people to different ideas and be some sort of like an intermediary, I guess.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely, man. But yeah, so I wanted to start off with this, Jake, because I've kind of scoured the internet and there's not too many like interviews of you kind of laying out a lot of like how you got started in YouTube or how you were kind of brought up. But I wanted to ask you this just to start off the conversation and the podcast is like, you were raised in Australia. Like,
Hmm.
how was it like? How was your upbringing like? When you were a young kid? Were you raised in a two-parent household? How was your parents like raising you, etc.? And how did all of that lead to you doing political content in the future? You know?
Yes, it's a good question, and it's an unlikely sort of circumstance because I grew up in the western suburbs of Melbourne, and anyone that knows Melbourne knows that the western suburbs is sort of like the wrong side of the tracks.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up in a household with a mum and a dad, and they would both love me very much. So a good two-parent household, which was great. My dad was a South African army veteran, so he spent a few years running around the jungles of Angola, fighting in wars and what have you. And my
Wow.
mum is like an Italian Australian firecracker. So it was a pretty fun, interesting upbringing, man. Like I was in the generation just before the current one where we used to run around on the streets a lot rather than like whatever they're doing now, playing like the video games and shit. So
Yeah. Yeah.
pretty rogue sort of kid. Me and my brothers were always like really boisterous and everything. But yeah, man, I had a really good upbringing. We never had much money or never had any means or anything like that. But you know, we were like super happy. Like you don't really give a shit when you're a kid. You know, it doesn't really matter to
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but like, yeah, so I was pretty happy, dude, and went to school around my area. It was cool. And then when I went to high school, my parents like worked really hard and saved up and sent me to like a pretty good high school, which was like a private school in Australia.
Hmm.
I don't know how they afforded it, to be honest. Like
Wow.
with
You went to
looking
private
back now,
school.
yeah,
Really?
yeah.
N-
So they sent me. Well, for the first 3 years of high school, I went to private school,
mhm.
and that was like one of the best schools in Melbourne. So I like looking back on it. Back then, I didn't like took it for granted, but like looking back on it now, like you're like they really sacrificed a lot. So I
Yeah.
appreciate that. But yeah, spent 3 years there, and then when I was like 14, my old man got really sick, and he had a heart attack, and he was in like a induced coma for a month. And then
Mm.
I just literally from that moment on, like I was always a bit naughty, but I was a good kid. Like 1 month later, I was kicked out of that school, got suspended like 3 times, all just for fights and violence. And then
Really?
I went to a public school, which was on the west in the west, because like the private school was in the eastern suburbs, and then I went to a public school in the western suburbs, like around my house.
Hmm.
So yeah, like put it this way, man. If anybody would have told my teachers that I'd end up doing political and cultural commentary, they would have laughed at you.
Yeah, I bet. What made you act up though? Like you seemed like you were saying you were a good kid, and then all of a sudden you got into fights, got kicked out of school. And what was it because of like your friends and anything like that? You seemed to be
Mm.
that seems kind of like out of nowhere.
Yeah, kind of, dude. Like it was just that my dad got sick, man. And like when you're young and you have these
Oh.
because he was like really bad. He had a heart attack. He was dead for an hour, and then he was in an induced coma, and then he was severely disabled after that. And we dealt with it for
Oh,
5 years, and then he died. So it was like, like
okay.
when you're a kid like that, and something happens where you have your whole world rocked and completely shatters the foundations of your life, then you just don't know how to deal with it. So I just started acting up, and I was always kind of like a robust, boisterous kind of kid,
Uh-huh.
but I was never really like academic or anything like that at all. But
Mm,
when that happened, it just sort of, I guess, like I just spiraled because you don't have the father figure
the
to
father
just sort
figure.
of like slap you around the chops when you're being an idiot. So that was what
Yeah.
it was, dude. And then just me and my brothers all went through it in our own different ways, and we're all a real handful for my mum for a number of years.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm really sorry to hear that, man.
That's cool,
Um,
man.
yeah. Okay. Wow. Okay. So you were obviously you were raised with your dad until you said you were 14, got
Mm.
kicked out, went over to another school. During that time when you were over there, you met some new friends, etc. What kind of got you like now that that your teachers would say like for you to get into the political sphere is kind of out of nowhere. What made you exactly get into politics and or at least even start up a YouTube channel, you know?
Well, it was a good while after that. After 14, I was still not remotely interested in politics or anything like that.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, so I like my whole teenage years was basically a blur after that, up until I was like well into my 20s, and I got like even later in my teenage years, I got really obese, and was like doing all kinds of bad. You can imagine, you know what I mean, like a
Yeah.
rebellious, off the rails, late teenage, early 20s. You can just imagine, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, all the worst of it. So did all of that, and then I moved to London when I was 19 and lived there for like 3 years. And one of the most significant things that happened to me was that I started boxing because I was really overweight. I was like about
Mm.
30 kilos overweight. And when I got to London, I the first few days I was there, it was really vulnerable because my dad had just passed away at that time, like a few months before, after being sick for years. And I was like
Right.
very in a very vulnerable sort of place. Like I was like, okay, I don't really know what I'm doing with my life. Going to go to London. And then London is absolutely debaucherous, man. Like if you want to go for a place with party and drugs and
Right.
all kinds of like
London.
weird shit, dude,
Yeah.
that's the place to go. Like you can just get sucked down so many different wormholes. But I was so lucky that um my security guard at the work that I was working at this bar,
Mhm.
we were talking about boxing because he used to do boxing, and I was like, "Oh, I've always wanted to start." And then he introduced me my boxing coach, and then for the next 3 years, I basically just spent that boxing and just doing
Oh.
nothing else, but just training hard. I lost all this weight and got really like sort of fit and healthy, and got a lot of discipline, and had a really close relationship with my coach. So that was
Mhm.
probably a very significant thing that happened to like pull me back into line. Because if it wasn't for that, dude, I would have 100% taken the other route and gone down the sort of like party lifestyle for sure, and I would not be here right now. So
Really?
yeah. So that was a significant thing. But then, dude, it was like the pandemic was what sort of really red pilled me, because before then I didn't care about politics or anything at all.
Right. By the way, so you found a boxing coach. Would you say that you kind of he was kind of like the replacement, kind of like a
That's
father
exactly
figure to
right.
you? I kind of
That's
figured.
exactly right.
I hear
Yeah.
a lot of stories when it comes to boxers that their trainers tend to get very close to them because you know
Mm.
it's kind of an intimate, it's martial arts, it's fighting, it's
Yeah.
protection, etc. So it kind of makes sense that, you know, he helps you lose weight as well. Wow,
Yeah, I think
okay.
young men are all sort of like yearning for a father figure. And when you
Mhm,
don't have that, like young men really desperately need mentorship. And I don't care
mhm,
if anybody tells me that that's not true. It's so true. And like I've never known really successful people who don't have male role models and mentors or
mhm.
whatever that sort of molded them.
Of
And I
course.
think that the good thing about that is that like not only do young men need that, I think that older men get a real satisfaction out of being able to open doors for a young guy and help him on his development, which is a nice dynamic I think that men tend to have with each other. Like if I ever have a guy who's younger than me who's coming up, and I can see that he's working hard, and he reaches out and asks for advice or something, like I'll happily give my time and energy to help him.
Yeah.
But yeah, young dudes really look out for that, man. So like when I didn't, and like mind you as well, like my dad wasn't like a passive sort of like wimpy dad. He was a bad
Yeah,
motherfucker, like
he's an
South
army guy.
African
Yeah.
army vet. And yeah.
Yeah.
And so going from that to nothing was like a big jump. So I think that I looked for something that was like a seriously masculine sort of figure, and that's what my boxing coach was. Just no bullshit.
Yeah.
We'll give it to you straight between the eyes if you need feedback. And I like that. You know, I tend to function well with those sorts of people who don't pussyfoot around. So
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense with your the Rattlesnake TV logo that you have. You have a boxer boxing the snake,
hmm that was my fight
which
name, Rattlesnake. So
I was about to ask
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Was
yeah.
that Jake the Rattlesnake Julius? I would assume was kind of your
Yes. Well,
boxing
I
name.
never really had Julius. He's like Jake Rattlesnake was the Jake the Rattlesnake. Yeah. But
Oh, okay.
yeah, there was like one day because I was boxing and I had my first fight in Melbourne when I got back from London.
Hmm.
And and it was like a arena, sort of, not an arena, but like a big sort of exhibition hall sort of thing. So there's like thousands of people there.
Hmm.
And the guy who was running the event was like to me, dude, you need to have a name. And I was kind of like friendly with the guy. And he's like, if you don't have a name, I'm going to make one for you. And I knew that he
The
was going
human
to like
spider.
say, yeah, I knew he was going to say like the pixie or like Jake the fairy or something like that if I didn't say something. So
Yeah.
I was like, oh shit. So I was working at a Salvation Army at the time at like a homeless shelter, and I used to like getting amongst all of the like the homeless people and like just sort of chatting to them because they're the most interesting like sort of unfiltered people in the world.
Right.
So I did that for a few years, which is another good story. But yeah, I got out there and I was like, shit, like I got this fight coming up in a few weeks. I don't have a name. And then one of the guys comes up, he's like, "Oi, why don't you call yourself Jake the Rattlesnake, bruh? Rattlesnake." And I was like, that's actually a good idea. So some homeless guy made that name for me.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
like, but it also makes sense, right? Like even myself being Jake, they'll be like Jake the snake. They never say rattlesnake, but the rattlesnake part just makes it so much cooler. So I'm like, oh,
Yes. Yeah.
Jake
Jake the Snake's
Rattlesnake.
too generic. You know what I mean?
It's way too generic, bro. Way too generic.
Yeah.
You wouldn't believe how many times I hear that from people like, yo, Jake the Snake. It's just so, or
Yeah.
Jake
Yeah.
from State Farm. Do you ever get Jake from State Farm a lot?
I think like someone from the Crucible called me that. And I was like, what does that even mean? Someone explained it to me, but I can't even remember what that means.
Yeah. So State Farm it's like an insurance company here in the United States. And State Farm had this really popular commercial where the
Mm.
mascot, his name was Jake from State Farm. And he called up like he was talking to a guy really late at night. The wife takes the phone away from him and says, "Who are you talking to?" He's like, "Oh, it's Jake." And then she's like, "Hello?" And he's like, "Yeah, hello. What are you wearing?" "Oh, I'm wearing khakis." She sounds hideous. It's like it's Jake from State Farm, but it was a really popular commercial like back in the day. So I get a lot of like Jake from State Farm or Jake the Snake. So I kind of figured you might have got like, especially if you come to the United States, you'll get a lot of the Jake from State Farm comments too.
I have heard it a few times. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But also I wanted to ask you this. Because I've heard you say, because now that they were talking like, okay, you were in boxing and you found a mentorship, and I've heard you say multiple times that back in the day you were a Coomer liberal atheist, right? That's all
Mm.
correct? Which shocks me a little bit. That you kind of went into that route of like, I'm an atheist, right? And one
Yeah.
thing that I've noticed, because you are a Christian now, right? If I got that
Yeah.
correct. Okay.
Yep.
One thing that I've noticed with a lot of people that start off like atheists, like I got a buddy of mine, OJ. When I first met him like 10 years ago, he was a Satanist, and then he went to agnostic, and then he became an atheist, and now he's a Christian man. He married his girl and they have a kid together, right? XYZ. And I see this a lot with people, like even with people that we know. For example, the Joe Rogan video that you did earlier, where you documented uh, Joe Rogan's statements from years ago of how he thought of Christianity, all the way to how he is now, right? And we even see this with Andrew Tate. It kind of seems like a lot of people kind of start off with like liberal atheists, kind of like the rebellion, edgy type of thing, and then later they find Christianity or they'll find God, etc. So I want to ask you, like, what was that moment in time where you thought to yourself, you know what, God does exist, or Christ is a thing, and you finally kind of came more or less into flourishing for your faith, more or less?
Yeah. That's a really good question. That's a really good question. Um, Well, there were many different moments along the way that it's like sort of like the gradual turn. I'd say
Mhm.
that I've come to it through logic more than anything else, rather than some sort of like a spiritual, penny drop moment.
Mhm.
But I'd say it's just like I love watching debates. You might have noticed that I've covered a few debates on my
Oh
channel over,
yeah,
over the last few years. So
definitely.
the way that I learn, like I'm not very good at reading I'm not a big reader of physical text or anything like that. But for
Hmm.
some reason, when I watch debates and I watch the two ideas going at it, like I
Yeah.
really learn a lot off that. And I'm able to actually just like take in both of the ideas and like I think I'm a pretty logical person, so I can kind of ascertain which argument is better. And then
Right.
once you start to sort of learn the rules of debate and the laws of logic and the sort of and you can sort of narrow it down and really see who has the best ideas. I started getting really into debates about God. And this is one of the biggest things. There are a lot of things, but this is just one that I'll give you. And like
Right.
I started watching the debates because when I was younger, how old are you, by the way, Jake?
32.
32. So you're similar age to me. So you would have been around right in the peak of that sort of new atheist movement when all the really
Yes.
popular stuff on YouTube was Christopher Hitchens and Richard Dawkins and Hitch
Right.
Slaps and Richard Dawkins. And I think that
Yep.
like just because it's cultural, people are really influenced by that. And because they have that sort of British charisma and charm and the cutting sort of wit,
Hmm.
they're able to sort of really like be quite influential. And if you don't know the rules of the debate, if you don't know the rules, then those sorts of things can really deceive you. And I was really deceived by it. But then when you start to understand it a little bit more on a higher level and you
Hmm.
watch those debates, you realize that, oh, actually, all of those little sound bites that I saw were from larger debates where those atheists got absolutely smoked. Like, for
Yeah.
example, Sam Harris against William Lane Craig was an absolute bloodbath. William Lane
Yeah.
Craig twisted him in like a pretzel, you know?
Inside Out. Did you
Um,
see the Peterson one too, where he debated Jordan Peterson back in like 2017 or 2018?
yeah.
That was
Yeah.
another one too. Yeah,
Yeah.
but go on. I know which
But
ones you're
you just
talking about.
realize sort of like how shallow it all is. And then the further I went down, like I'd say when I started my YouTube channel a few years ago, I was like culturally Christian, kind of agnostic, thinking that there probably is a God, I would say. Like the idea of God kind of makes sense to me. And I
Right.
think that the Christian societies are definitely the best from what I've seen. But I was like really hesitant to go down it. And then I started because like all I do all day, every day is just research, right? And research
Right.
ideas and see who's got the best ideas and analyze debates. So it's just constant analysis of culture and constant analysis of politics and society and
Yeah.
started speaking to and making friends with a lot of Christians and having some really sort of interesting conversations. I had a very good one with the guy from Daily Dose of Wisdom, Brandon,
Hmm.
of the YouTube channel, and we had a really good chat. And then as started to go, I started to just get led through logic and through reason down the path of Christianity because of all of the societal benefits.
Right.
I think that the arguments for God are completely and utterly outclass the atheist argument. I don't think atheists actually have any arguments when you boil it down. They
Right.
can't have any arguments. And then also the evidence for the resurrection of Christ was
Right.
extremely compelling to me.
Compelling. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the implementation of prayer and some of the things that have happened in my life in that regard are also pretty much unexplainable. So it gets you to a place where I've been knocking and
Mhm.
uh, you know yeah, the door has been opened many times, even though you continuously turn your back and doubt and everything. But
Right.
yeah, I'd say I'm a Christian, but just so young and new in the faith.
Yeah. Would you say that, like, because one thing that I've noticed when it comes to a lot of these people that it kind of seems like Christianity is making a comeback. I don't know
Oh
if
yeah,
you kind of feel
big
that
time.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the thing is, from what I've seen, especially with a lot of people that had that edgy atheist movement, now we kind of see a society or political spectrum where, we have the left wanting to chop off the genitals of kids, right?
Mm,
We have music like Sam Smith that's on the Grammys glorifying the devil, right? We have movies like Jack Black's latest movie. It's a Christmas movie where he literally plays Satan, and the
mm,
movie kind of pictures Satan as like this goofy, cool dude hanging out with a kid, and it's funny. And it's kind of like you see this in society where they're kind of like sympathizing with the devil, right? There's a song called "Sympathy for the Devil," and it's you see that a lot in society that I think it's so in your face that a lot of people are kind of like, you know what? Um, I think there is a God, or they're starting to kind of rebel against the Hollywood woke and the Hollywood of things, or you know what I mean. And it's
yes.
just something that I've seen on that, and like for me personally, I've always had a faith. I've never been an atheist or anything like that. But for me personally, the more I see this shit, it's like the more and more that I would say there has to be a God. With all the crazy shit or the BLM riots that were happening, it's just absolute lunacy. What would you say upon like the mainstream media like Hollywood glorifying like satanic imagery and stuff like that? Like, do you think if it is real, do you think the devil is actually like using Hollywood and mainstream media to kind of push his agenda? I know
Mm.
it's kind of like a crazy kind of conspiracy question. I don't know,
No, not
but
really. I think it's an obvious yes, but it's just a matter of how and how you explain it. But
right.
like, I've talked with Jay Dyer a few times about this,
Mm,
and he's like a real expert in subject matter in regards to this because,
mm,
um, you know, there is no doubt that there's a cultural subversion that's happened of Christianity, and it's been happening for quite a while. And if you look at like one of the key tenets of Satanism, it's that you're
mm,
meant to show it, right? You're not meant to keep it to yourself. You're meant
right.
to somehow outwardly project it, whether it's through symbology or whether it's through whatever. And I
Hmm.
find that very interesting because these people do tend to show it through like the sort of like what the checkered floorboards and all of the music
Yeah.
videos and the Grammys and the all seeing eyes and
Right.
these sorts of things. And yeah, I do think that there's a very deeply satanic agenda that's going on, particularly in Hollywood.
Hmm.
But there's a lot of moving pieces to it. So I'm not an expert in it, but I think that it's pretty obvious and in your face, to be honest.
Oh yeah, big time. I completely agree with you on that. Especially, like I said, like when it comes to Hollywood, yeah, they put it in your face, and I think as a byproduct, there's been a lot of people that kind of convert or are converting back to Christianity or want to find Jesus, etc. And yeah, I mean, I guess we kind of see that even with like the Republican Party, etc. You know, or even like feminism. You've heard that where feminism. If you ever watched Rachel talk about this, I know she has, where feminism started off with like witchcraft and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They had the female, what was it, feminist Bible, where they took out
Oh
all the
yeah, yeah, yeah,
patriarchy
yeah,
out of that. Yeah, and so this has been going on for like for a long time now, hundreds of years, I guess supposedly.
yeah.
What's your take on feminism? And like, I want to ask you, in today's society, actually, before I do that, I wanted to ask you this question, and I wanted to play you something that you said on the Whatever podcast, actually.
Yeah, go for it.
And I found it pretty interesting because it's going to lead into some questions that I kind of have for you. And I found this to be interesting here. So just for the audience, this is what she said.
Generally, this is the attitude when it comes to guys who earn less than 100K. And it's to do with social media and it's to do with the male influencers as well who promote having to have, you know, $100 million just to get by. And it's just not the reality of things. Most men are out there working extremely hard, contributing to society and building things. I'm very lucky in the sense that I actually get to have a YouTube channel where I can earn a lot of money. If my YouTube channel goes away tomorrow like that, people will watch some other.
Yeah.
Doesn't even matter. But these guys, if they stop building the structure tomorrow, all of a sudden we've got half-built structures everywhere. All of a sudden you can't flush your toilet. All of a sudden you can't have electricity. And all of a sudden we can't have protection from the police. These are the people who literally build the world around you. And it's just like, I absolutely detest that notion of people laughing at people who work with their hands.
Yeah, so here you're talking about blue collared workers, and you're totally right on that. Because nowadays, if you look at Gen Z, a lot of these young kids want to grow up to be like YouTube stars or TikTok stars, you know, doing drastically stupid shit in order to go viral. We have women, especially with feminism, glorifying sexuality, etc. And a lot of these women don't necessarily respect or care about the blue collar worker anymore. Um, and this is what I wanted to ask you about. When it comes to feminism, would you say that like reversing the trend, and this is something that I've heard like Andrew talk about, etc. What's your take on women like in the workforce, I guess, like making their own bags, and how drastically does it affect the female male relationships?
Well, I think that women in higher education and the workforce is the primary driver for like much of the cultural decay that we see at the moment. Whether it's like because you know if you do look at society and you look at it like holistically, the backbone of the society is the nuclear family, right? We
Mhm.
need to have families with mother, father, and children in order to be functional. We know all the byproducts that happen from single motherhood.
Right.
And we know what it's like when children are growing up in these really unhealthy homes. And also, we know the positive impact that community has and that, going to church has, and all of these super, super positive things. So when you remove one of the key pillars of that, which is the mother and the wife from the household, which obviously plays a very significant role, then the byproducts of that are going to just expand endlessly. Like, for example, putting like women in higher education, it's just
Mhm.
like logically it follows that they wait longer to have children. And then if you
Right.
do go into higher education, you get a university degree. Well, what do you get a university degree for? You get it so that you can have a career. So then you're
Right.
going to do that, and you're going to then go into your career. And then once you're in your career, you're like, oh, well, I worked the last 10 years to get to
Yeah.
where I am today. Oh, I'm going to have children. No, I mean, Oprah told me that if I have children, it's bad. So why am I going to do that? So
Yeah.
yeah, it's like completely flipped what it's completely flipped the role of women on its head in society. And now, and also, I'm not sure it would be so easy to subvert men like that, because men are a little bit more discerning, but women, I think, are very impressionable. And
Yeah.
women tend to really follow culture. Like, so many times I've even been like dating girls, and I was dating this one Russian girl once, um, we were like dating for a little bit, and then she started telling me how, like, oh, all of these Russian girls are with Australian guys. And I was like, what do you mean? She's like showing me all these reels that she's saved over the
Yeah.
last 6 months of Russian girls with Australian guys. I was like, oh wow, like you've been influenced by that to the extent where you wanted to find yourself an Australian
Yeah.
guy. And like, just crazy stuff, like how, and that's why we need propaganda though. But the propaganda as it stands at the moment is go out and get your bag. Don't
Right.
rely on any man. If you cheat on your husband, it's not because like you're a bad person, it's because something was missing, you know.
Right.
Whereas if he
Right.
cheats
Yeah,
on you, it's
dude.
because he's like, and all of this sort of really backwards cultural messaging that they get fed, until, if they're not discerning enough to actually, before they get there, to be like, okay, shit, like this is not good, this is not working for me.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll get to 35 and they won't realize it till then, if they realize it at all. So that's what the propaganda tells them at the moment. But we need a propaganda shift the other way, to have all the Instagram reels of mums on their homesteads.
Yeah, yeah, kind of like China. Like even the
Yes,
propaganda over there in
yes,
China is, if you've ever looked at TikTok China, it's all of people working hard. It's women in the household, etc. But
it's
here in the
effective.
United
Yeah.
States, it's totally opposite, right? And by the way, do you think TikTok's going to go away, by the way, on Sunday? Because apparently that's like the latest rumor that it's going to
That's
get banned.
that's what I'm hearing, dude. I'm hearing that it's
Yeah.
going. It's got a few days left, and then
Yeah.
it's gone. So we're gonna. What's the next one called? Red something or whatever.
Read something. Yeah, read. And it's
Yeah,
funny because that's also a Chinese app that now
yeah,
these
yeah,
people are
yeah,
kind of migrating over there. So we're still going to get Chinese spyware. And it's crazy
yeah.
to me. It's like, why don't you just go to like Instagram, right? Because I think that's supposed to be Chinese Instagram. But why don't you just
Yeah,
go to
well, I
the
think that
American
the
Instagram?
reason is because of the war propaganda. There's certain
Oh,
interest groups that are not favored, and TikTok is very liberal and everything, so it's very, very pro-Palestinian, and
right.
there's certain people who are not too happy about that. And now they're saying that it's like because they want to sort of protect your data or whatever, and
Yeah.
protect your privacy from China, and then they're just going to go to another app by China and then do the same thing, because people are completely addicted to TikTok. I
Yeah.
only ever use it if I'm going on one of Andrew's invasions, but like
Mhm.
people are completely addicted to TikTok, man. So like they're gonna like they're not gonna just sort of sit around with their TikTok brain in their room staring at the wall. They're gonna go somewhere else, and it's gonna be whatever this red thing is, this new Chinese thing. So
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
just they give their data to those guys. Same government.
Yeah, same exact thing, man. I mean, like I said, it's absolutely insane with the TikTok brain, like you said before, and like I said, going back to like social media, man. A lot of these people, and I want to kind of bring up, staying on the subject of feminism. You did hear about what's her name, Lily Phillips?
Yeah, yeah,
You know who she is, obviously, and she
yeah,
had
yeah,
she had recently posted up a video after her little her little shenanigans
I saw
Well,
this. Yeah.
yeah, and so for people
Mm.
that haven't seen this, this is absolutely gross. Yeah, she's
Make sure you
walking
haven't just
around
eaten.
with semen still on her face. This is
There's like cars going by. I don't think anyone will notice. I think it looks like a bit like a face mask. Quite interesting. Gross.
this is see like this right here is insane to me, Jake. Like
Yeah,
that
dude,
we
that's what they
have
asked for.
bro, I know, but to go around in public with the semen still on your face, your tongue sticking out and totally proud of what you just did. You know, these women going to these OnlyFans and kind of glorifying these sexual acts and whatnot. I hear a lot of the RP creators, and I want to get your take on this, where I've heard Myron Gaines say this. I don't know if he still stands by this, but I've heard other RPs content creators say this, and they say something along the lines of feminism is completely here to stay. It's not going anywhere, right? So the best thing to do is just to adjust to feminism and roll with the punches, right? And that it's never going to go away. Uh and I want to ask you this. Is feminism so ingrained to where it's like an impossibility for us to reverse the culture to where we can get back shaming this type of behavior and bringing women back to the nuclear family, would you say?
It's doable. It'll take a few generations for sure. But
Mhm.
at the moment, those guys are right about that. At the moment, it's not going anywhere. But
Yeah.
I would agree with their description, but definitely wouldn't agree with their prescription. So their description of what is happening is true. Feminism is literally everywhere, and
Yeah.
it's like omnipresent, right? But
Yeah.
their prescription, which is adjust to it, no. We have to get out our swords and we have to fight it on we have to fight in the hills, we have to fight on the fields, we have to fight in the, as Winston Churchill said, you know. So,
Right, right.
yes, that's my prescription.
Totally agree with you on that. But you know, it's funny when I was younger and I heard Myron say something like that. I'm like, you know what? He's right. It's not going anywhere. I don't think, like you said before, I think it's going to take generations for us to reverse like what you're talking about propaganda, but I guess true propaganda, not
Yes, propaganda aimed towards truth. Yeah.
yeah, there you go. Propaganda aims towards truth rather than the propaganda that we currently have, right? And I think it could
Yeah.
be reversed, but maybe not in our lifetime. Perhaps
No, I
not.
don't think so. Yeah. I think that
Yeah.
we might see some drastic changes in our lifetime because the way that it's going in terms of the demographic collapse that we're having and the birth rate collapse that we're having in the West,
Right.
that is going to affect us in our lifetime. Like we're already seeing issues with the supply chain, and we're already seeing issues in Western country with the domestic labor force, and that
Yeah.
is going to get a lot worse. And then the immigration and multiculturalism, one could argue, is, if not completely, it's like a significant byproduct of this demographic crisis and sort of trying to address that, kicking the can down the road. So we are seeing that. And then when you look at that and you look at the sort of bleak future of the Western world, like the liberal egalitarian mindset is not
Mhm.
going to win out because that is a one-way road towards just like societal collapse and basically death. So
Yeah.
you know, like there's a big difference between progressivism and conservatism, you know, because conservatism is fundamentally about conserving traditions, right? And traditions are the things that have lasted the test of time for thousands of years. And these are human practices and human sort of behaviors that have worked, basically, right?
Right.
And
Right.
progressivism is just inherently based upon the current thing. Progressivism is based upon dismantling traditional
Yeah.
traditional institutions because if it's not if it's old, it's bad pretty much. If it's old,
Right.
we must dismantle. So the problem with that though is that there's a new trend every 5 minutes. So it's basically just sort of like chasing a feather in the wind. Whereas
Yeah.
conservatism and traditionalism is like the sturdy rock face that the waves of progressivism just constantly crash into. And
Crash
so
into it. Yeah.
yeah, and so you can't win if you're a progressive ultimately because you know it's a one-way road to nowhere. Whereas conservatism is rooted in something that's actually solid and something that's tried and tested, and that's tradition. So
Yeah.
it's not going to win. Whether or not we see drastic effects in our lifetime, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I completely agree with you on that, man. Especially, you know, it's funny when you talk about like liberalism kind of taking over conservative values, right? And I think
Mm,
we're seeing a little bit of the pendulum swinging back to a little bit of conservatism, at least to a
hmm
degree. Would you say that a big part of the pendulum swinging back to that is the internet influencers? Like we were talking about Joe Rogan, who started off as an atheist. Now he's talking about Christianity. Now Donald Trump, well, with Elon Musk buying out X, I think him buying out X was a huge component from Donald Trump winning this past election.
hmm
Also him, of course, almost getting shot, etc. Do you see like a lot of people kind of looking at being a Trump supporter to be kind of cool? Because and I'll tell you this, Jake, when I was first supporting Donald Trump back in 2017, I remember this. By the way, I'm Hispanic and I live in South Texas, right? South Texas, it's like 90% Hispanics. When I was here, bro, and I had that MAGA hat, um, I almost there was people that wanted to beat me up because of my political views. And I don't know if you
I've heard
remember
this.
back
I've
then.
heard it was like that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
wasn't involved at all. I didn't care back then, but yeah, I've heard it was
Oh,
like
okay.
that.
Yeah, yeah, dude.
Yeah.
So there was videos coming out of people like getting attacked. I didn't record it or nothing like that, but I did show up with a MAGA hat at a bar and I did, get threatened, want to get, people wanted to beat me up because of my political views. And at the time it was just crazy because I was being called a coconut, right? You're brown on the outside, white on the inside, a race traitor, like all sorts of stupid shit that I didn't really give a shit about, right? But I remember all that. And then now we see if you look at the South Texas stats, all of the Cameron counties, I mean, all of the counties that surround the border all turned red this past election. And
Wow.
if you saw the Hispanic vote, I think it was like 45% Hispanics voted for Donald Trump. He got a huge percentage of the Hispanic vote, right? And so we see a lot of this pendulum like swinging back to where nowadays I can walk around with the MAGA hat around here and nobody would tell me a damn thing. They would say, "Oh yeah,
Yeah.
nice hat." We have MAGA stores now. Here compared to 6, 7 years ago when that was like unheard of, man. Um, but it's kind of like I see a lot of this now happening. Would you say that would you say that now the Republican Party is kind of has its grasp on the people? And if so, how are the Democrats going to kind of react going forward, going into 2028? Like, what do you think their next move is, especially because Trump won a lot of the minority vote, Um,
Yeah.
like, what's your thoughts on the next move for the Democratic Party? I know it's kind of a loaded question, but I'm just trying
Yeah.
to kind of get your thoughts on some of
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. I gotcha. Yeah. Well, I think that the Democrats are genuinely retarded and incompetent. And
Yeah.
I don't say that lightly because, I'm not just saying that because they're like the political adversaries.
Hmm.
I was looking at it in this last election, like, all right, they must be playing some sort of 4D chess here. Okay, like they're getting Joe Biden. What are they going to do? Are they
Right,
going to
right.
sort of have a bit of a midnight run again during this election? Okay, now they're getting Kamala. When he went down, I was like, all right, like Kamala Harris? No, surely not. Like she's going to move aside in a few weeks and it's going to be Newsom and Michelle Obama.
Right.
That was my thought process. And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
they're going to sort of bring out some big guns. No,
No.
they kept it with Kamala Harris, dude. And I was like, okay. Well, they're going to go with the propaganda now, and they're doing the TikTok thing, some
Right.
sort of, and then it just sort of faded away. And then she just showed that like that the emperor wears no clothes after a few weeks of her campaign.
Yeah.
And then it just looked like Donald Trump was going to dominate. And then election day came up, and it was like, are they going to do a midnight run again?
Right.
Basically. But they didn't. And then
They didn't.
Donald Trump took it out in a landslide. And I was like, okay, so they're retarded, basically. They're retarded. That's what's happened here.
Yeah.
They're idiots.
Yeah.
So honestly, I think that Gavin Newsom is going to be the next
You
candidate.
think so?
And people are losing at the moment. Like his political career is over. But I'm like, don't rule out the Democrats because Kamala Harris, total failure, political failure.
time.
Never did anything good. Joe Biden, complete and utter political failure.
Yep.
Just wrong on everything. Just, such a bad track record of lying about weird things and sniffing kids
Sniffing
and whatever.
hair. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I honestly think that the trajectory for Democrat politicians is just disaster after disaster after disaster after presidential candidate nominee. So I still think, even though people think that these fires have ruined it, I think that Gavin Newsom will be the next candidate.
Wow. Gavin
'Cause he's
Newsom's
got
gonna
nice
be the
hair.
future. Yeah, he does have nice hair. That's
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
But you're putting your money on Gavin. Okay.
Yeah.
To be honest, you might be right, bro, because what else? Because the thing about the Republican Party is that the Republican Party has a bench, right? We have Vivek Ramaswamy, right? We have what's his name? The vice president.
You got JD Vance, yeah.
JD Vance, yeah. We have JD Vance, we have Vivek Ramaswamy, we have like a lot of
Now
these
you've
people
got
that-
RFK, and you're probably
RFK.
like Tulsi Gabbard as well is gonna probably work in Trump's cabinet. I would hate to see any of those two become president, but that it
Me
says
too.
something that they're there. And you've got people like Ted Cruz and all the sort of like neocons that are trying to sort of rebrand.
Yeah.
But you guys have got some promising ones as well. I think that we're going to see a Trump dynasty, if I'm honest. I think that in yours and my lifetime, we're going to see a Trump dynasty. It's going to be the most powerful political family in American history.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and Eric or Don Jr. will be president, then Barron will be president as well.
You think so?
Yeah.
So it's going to be all the dynasties of the Trump family. Actually, I would be fucking 100% down with that. Actually,
yeah,
that sounds like a good idea.
I'm sure of it. I'm certain that the Trumps are going to stay in politics for the next 100 years.
Yeah. That sounds like a good idea, especially when somebody like because I know you've spoken with Jesse Lee Peterson. Jesse always calls him the Great White Hope, and Jesse's a guy that says, if Donald Trump could be president forever, I'd be fucking okay with that. And to be honest, I'm like, so would I, to be perfectly fair. I think I'd be totally fine with that,
Oh yeah, I'd be completely cool with that if you just completely got rid of democracy, the democratic system for a little while. Like in the Roman Empire, they used to do this, man. Like when the empire was really in shambles and the bureaucracy had sort of gotten its claws in, because there's a book called Barbarians to Bureaucrats, right? It just shows the sort of the life cycle of a business. The barbarians, you got the visionary who has the idea, and you got the what is it called? Barbarians to Bureaucrats or something like that. Anyways, you got the visionary who has the ideas, and then you got the builders who come in, they sort of build it up, and then eventually you get the bureaucrats who come in and they sort of like make everything really super complicated. Then the barbarians will come in, right? So what we're seeing in regards to America at the moment, this happened in the Roman Empire many times, is that you're in that sort of bureaucratic stage at the moment where the government is just so bloated, right? And anything that has to happen has to go through all of these random bureaucrats. And it's like somebody like Trump wanted to drain the swamp, and I hope he does this time, but somebody needs to cut through the bureaucracy and be able to just make executive decisions. And I would, honestly, it sounds outrageous, but I think that Donald Trump putting on the crown would be more effective than him having 4 years and then going back to an election. Him putting on the crown for the last 10 years of his life and just saying, we're cutting the bullshit, we're going to win. I think that would be more effective. Yeah.
I think so too. Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you, Jake. But obviously the Democrats will come at us and say that you're destroying democracy, right? They spent the last 10 years or so saying that he's a threat to democracy, even though they put Kamala Harris in there. Not a single vote that she was even brought up, man. I mean,
well, they treat democracy like it's a be all and end all. And when people don't really realize this, and I'm in Latin America at the moment, and people really don't realize this in places like Latin America, is that like democracy is just an idea. And when you step back for a second and you sort of look at what democracy really is, it's just a construct and it's just an idea. And there are lots of other different ways. And like the democratic experiment, like America is the longest ever sort of democratic experiment to my knowledge.
Right.
There might be some sort of arbitrary place, but it's a very young political ideology, and it's just sort of starting. And monarchy is a very old political ideology. And I'm not necessarily a monarchist, but I'm definitely not somebody who's like democracy, if it's a threat to democracy. And I'm like, okay, well, like ideas are threat to ideas, Ideas are always threatening other ideas. And perhaps that democracy does need some competition,
Would you say that that the current system that we have in the United States is the best system in the world to kind of run a like the best society that we can, or can we replace that with something else? and be just as effective depending on
I
X,
think
Y,
that a limited democracy would be much, much more effective. There's absolutely no reason that I can think of. I can't think of one good reason why a dumbass tofu-eating blue-haired 19-year-old who's just done a degree in sociology, or who's doing a degree in sociology, should vote. Like, you have no skin in the game whatsoever.
Yeah.
You've never owned a business. You don't have a family. You don't have skin in the game. So I think that there should be stipulations for who votes. People who have served their country and served it for a certain amount of time, people who have contributed X amount to the economy in terms of a business, and people who have a family. So the way that I'd like to see it is that the family has a vote, which is cast by the man and the husband of the family. If you're a single person, you shouldn't have a vote unless you've served your country or unless you've contributed in some major way through, like, some major economic way in business or whatever. And at the very, very least, there should be a reasonable civics test that, you know, people kind of have to know their shit a little bit to pass.
So a civics test, as in, like, you have to know, name 50 states, something fucking basic like that, at least.
Yep. How the government works, the 3 branches of government, etc.
Yeah, no, actually, I can get behind that drastically. I like that idea. But also, like, you have to realize a lot of people do take, like, everybody pays taxes, right? So some of the arguments that you'll probably get pushback on is, well, Jake, I pay my taxes. Why shouldn't I get a right to vote, right? Even though I don't own a business, etc. What would you say along those lines? Is it like every single person, do you have to own a business in your kind of limited democracy there?
Well, I'd say that the majority of people are actually tax burdens. The majority of people actually take more from the tax system than they give. Like, for example, women are a net tax burden on the economy. Women don't actually net contribute to the tax base, whereas men do. And also, like, 13-year-old, 14-year-olds who have a job, they also pay tax. Should they be entitled to vote? I'd say no, just because they pay tax. I think there's a lot more that goes into actually the idea that you can cast a ballot and send people to war than the fact that you pay taxes, even if you are like a net negative on the economy, which a lot of people unfortunately are. Like, a lot of people pay, a lot of people receive all sorts of welfare and receive some sort of like public health and medical care, and they drive on the roads that are built by the government, and they use a lot of the sort of infrastructure in society that is actually supplied by the government, and then they pay very minimal tax, which would make you actually a tax burden. So, that's what I'd say.
Yeah. Okay. Right on. I can see your point there. Jake, I wanted to ask you this actually, because you had, because I wanted to kind of get you a little bit more of your take on, hold on, let me find it really quick. Sorry. I wanted to get more of your take on somebody recently. Hold on, sorry about this.
No problem.
Andrew Tate.
Yep.
And I wanted to kind of bring up the Andrew Tate situation because I wanted to kind of get a little bit more of your take on Andrew, because I think it's funny because when I first started YouTube, I did a lot of videos following Andrew's cases when he first got raided by the Romanian government.
Same. I did a few as well, yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah. And so I followed that case so much. And me personally, I find Andrew Tate to be a net positive for society. Now, I get a lot of flack on that. And I know that there's a lot of people on the right that tend to think otherwise, that Andrew is a horrible human being, a trafficker, etc. You've heard the whole gimmick here, right? And one of his biggest critics here is, of course, Ben Shapiro, which I like Ben Shapiro a lot, or at least I did. Not so much when I was younger. I did like it a lot. But this is Ben Shapiro's latest take on Andrew Wilson. I know you've probably been following Andrew saying that, about being the Prime Minister of the UK. I'm sure you've heard little bits and pieces of that.
The Bravo Party,
Yeah. So this is what Ben Shapiro had to say.
Even if you just believe the stuff he said about himself, what he says is evil. He made his money off of cam girls, which is to say, he is a self-professed pimp, and he made his money grooming women for the industry. Now, all the people on the right who are very upset correctly about the grooming gangs in Britain are going to have to explain why they're okay with his grooming gang. Here was Andrew Tate explicitly explaining his method. Now he claims it's all a joke, but it's not a joke. He literally made millions of dollars doing this thing.
So yeah, on corporatetape.com, I have my PhD program, and that is PhD is a pimp and hose degree that I'm.
Clever.
And
Clever.
That teaches basically how I got girls, how I met girls, how I got girls to like me, how I got girls to fall in love with me to work on webcam for me. Because that's what I did. That was my MO, was find girls, make them love me, and make them work for me. And that's how I got rich.
Okay, now, if you know anything about the grooming gang scandal in Britain, that's exactly what the grooming gang scandal is. That's exactly what it is. They took underage girls, they would convince these young girls that the girls were in love with them, and then they would pass them around their group of friends for money. That's exactly what happened in the grooming gangs trials in the UK, which is a massive scandal internationally, as it should be. If you're Andrew Tate, then if you confess to doing things like this on tape, like he just said, then morally it's somehow okay because you're anti-woke or something.
Okay, so I wanted to kind of get your take.
Wild.
Ben Shapiro compares Andrew Tate to the scandal that's going on over there, which, by the way, that scandal has been going on for years and years. Of the UK kind of turning a cheek.
Yeah, I've been following it for years, man. Yeah.
Yeah. So he compares what Andrew Tate did all those years ago to the scandal that's happening recently. Again, this is a division when it comes to the right and the left, and I'm going to get to another debate that you also did as well. But I want to get your initial reaction on what Ben said about Andrew Tate here.
I think that's an absolutely wild comparison to make, but it's sort of typical of Ben Shapiro because he's often so far off with his takes these days. But the grooming gang scandal in the United Kingdom was these people actually drugging and raping these girls. So they would find them and they would get them addicted to like heroin and other drugs, and then rape them and do all sorts of absolutely heinous things to them. And if not, they would just outright kidnap them and rape them. So no, not comparable whatsoever. Andrew Tate never sexually assaulted anybody, and if he did, and if he ever raped anybody, like they say, then he would be in prison right now, and he's not, and he's getting all of the charges are getting thrown out. So, is it moral to do the webcam studio? No. Does Andrew Tate regret that? I think he does. I think that he's sort of grown as a human being, and even though he's very sort of brazen about it still, and doesn't sort of, you have to sort of posture a certain way, I guess, to not sort of bend a knee and apologize and show weakness. Yeah, but I think when his head hits the pillow at night, he would deeply regret that. If you ask me, and you know, I'm the same, man. Like I've got things that you know, as you evolve and you start to like understand life a little bit better, you have things that when your head hits the pillow at night, you regret, you know. So or that you think, oh gosh, I'd never go back there. So I think that Tate would be there, but he also has to masquerade a certain way online. But Ben Shapiro, I haven't seen that clip, but that's just wild that he was comparing him to the grooming gangs. Yeah, it's such a disgrace to the actual people who were groomed by those gangs to have that sort of like fickle comparison done there. And it's just a terrible take.
Yeah, it's a horrible take, especially, well, because the thing is, I know Shapiro and Tate have had this kind of back and forth rivalry for like a year and a half now. So I think I think Shapiro's coming out of a form of like really, really disliking of Tate. You know, like I think he probably hates the guy, to be honest. To compare him to
Tate's like a Muslim, and he's sort of very anti-Israel and everything. So I think that all the conservatives who are like really sort of Israeli sort of guys, they're not such big fans of Tate anymore. Yeah. So
I get you there. But like you kind of see this, like even with because like it's funny because when Andrew Tate, to a degree, he did agree with Tommy Robinson when he was on Piers Morgan's show. Piers Morgan had brought it up that he said some type of tweet, I believe it was something along the lines that Robinson's right, that these people are coming in here and they're raping young girls, and there's a big issue there. Piers Morgan had a big issue with Tate even mentioning that. I think Piers Morgan has that same type of hatred towards Tommy Robinson as like Shapiro has with Andrew Tate, man.
Yeah, Piers Morgan's just butthurt that he's been taking L's for years off Tommy Robinson, and Tommy Robinson's been right, and Piers Morgan was virtue signaling, saying, "How dare you say anything mean about the Quran?" And Tommy Robinson was just And over the years, Piers Morgan's just been one of the Tommy Robinsons. Because what Piers Morgan does is he's a smart guy, right? He licks his finger in the morning, he puts it up, and he sees which way the wind is blowing, right? And then he'll go that way. And then he's always been like that. He's always been a feather in the wind throughout his whole career. He
Being a
stood up for
grifter.
the exactly
Yeah.
right, yeah. And you know, if the really cool thing to do was to say that you know, men should play in women's sports, he wouldn't be this sort of like in this tirade against, you know, men and women's sport, which is like the most
Yeah.
sort of milk toast basic bitch argument ever to sort of get
Yeah.
behind. Like, you know, touch some real grass, Piers. You know?
Yeah, for reals.
But yeah.
But by the way, I know that you recently interviewed Tommy Robinson, and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
saw that interview was fucking fantastic, man. I wanted to ask you, how's Tommy Robinson like, man? Is because I know you've interviewed a lot of people, and I know you've met a lot of these kind of political pundits throughout your time as a YouTuber. Um, I want to ask you: is Tommy Robinson and a lot of these individuals, are they the same off camera as they are on camera? Or is there a personality difference?
you get it's a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag, Jake. I'll tell you what. It's there's a old saying that says it's a big club and you ain't in it, right? And I think that that's very true. It is a big club, and you and I, we ain't in it. But Tommy Robinson's an absolute legend. Like before he got locked, he's in prison at the moment. But before he went to prison, we'd regularly text and WhatsApp, and like he sends out just voice messages, and like he's just a funny bastard, you know. We banter. Like if the messages ever got leaked, we'd be in trouble. But yeah, but yeah,
you'd be on trial for fucking trafficking.
Yeah.
I'm sure, Jay.
I'd be right there in the
Right there
in the
with him.
cell next to him and Tate and everything.
Yeah, dude.
But yeah, so Tommy Robinson's a legend. But like, you know, the thing is, like, the guys who sort of come from nothing and who have sort of grafted their way to the top, those ones, and not grifted, grafted. Grafted is a very English word, not to get it mixed up. But like those ones who have like really worked their way to the top or worked their way up to sort of really dig it out the mud, and those are the ones who tend to like appreciate it a little bit more, and to have those sort of old school values and not be entitled, and to be sort of a man of their word. Like Tommy Robinson's a busy guy, you know, and he was in London those days because there was massive protests going and everything, and he was on trial, and all this shit was happening. He had no security guards when he rocked up, but he came and made the time for me for a few hours because I think he appreciated that I'd covered him in a few of my videos and been positive, and he doesn't get that much. Well, definitely when I started covering him, he definitely didn't get much love on the internet. Yeah. So there's that, and he's cool, and like, you know, that's the reason why I get along with guys like him, because he's like a larrikin, you know, he's like kind of guy you want to have a beer with. And I get along really well with people like, you know, like Andrew Wilson, real old school values, straight up, will never tell you a lie. And then guys like Lord Miles is a funny one as well. He's really cool. Some of the cool ones, like I just named, like Jimmy Corsetti from Bright Insight. Have you seen that channel?
Yeah.
Legend, exactly the same off screen as he is on screen.
Uh-huh.
Lord Miles is an absolute character. Have you ever seen Lord Miles? He's
I'm
the
not
guy
too sure.
who got captured by the Taliban and was in the Taliban prison for like 8 months.
Oh shit! No.
Yeah, he's a funny bastard in real life. Connor Tomlinson over in the UK and the Lotus Eaters, and Carl Benjamin. Those guys are all super cool.
Carl Benjamin. Yeah.
So there's some good ones, dude, but like it's often the ones who have made it themselves. But then there's a whole thing going on. There's a whole club that's a bit more exclusive. And they all tend to think a certain way about certain things, and they all tend to act a certain way about certain things, and they all tend to get invited to the nice, like, sort of cocktail parties and everything, and it's a whole weird thing. Like
I kind of wish I knew who you're talking about here.
Yeah. I mean, just imagine Conservative Inc. Just think
Conservative
about that.
Inc. So
yeah,
like your Charlie Kirks, maybe.
Yeah, oh yeah. They're all swamp creatures, you know.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah.
Because
so imagine that, like that sort of big sort of umbrella of mainstream conservatives. Who don't want to sort of be interviewed by like a peasant like myself, or who would never debate a guy like Andrew. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. There's a whole club.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Weird thing.
Yeah. Because I was wondering, because you've met a lot of these individuals, but I've noticed that a lot of the people that you do interview are people that are like fucking based as shit, right? These are dudes, especially like Englishmen, because you know you're closer over there than you are here in the States, right? But these are a lot of dudes that, like Tommy Robinson, I like a lot. I know he talks about Muslims unflattering, or at least the idea, right? Not necessarily the people who they are, but he always gets trampled on that. You saw Benjamin, right? He's another one that kind of has the same flack. And so for me, it's just like, yeah, I can see you getting along with them off panel, right? Off script.
Yeah.
Have you ever like you you're pretty big on the internet, man. Are you ever going to get on Pierce Morgan anytime soon and kind of scrapple with some of the panel on Pierce
I would
Morgan? Because I
love
think you
to.
do great.
Yeah, I would love to, but they won't have me on.
No?
I think I just don't really have the profile for it yet, man. Like eventually I think I will, but like I've been in contact with one of his producers and back and forth and then nothing. And then I'm not saying that I'm not taking credit for this,
Uh-huh.
but the first appearance, you see Andrew's first appearance on Piers
Yes.
Morgan?
Yeah.
I was messaging him a few days before it and I was like to his producer, I was like, listen, you know, I'm available to come on, whatever, just let me know. I'm like, these are this is my channel and these are some of the debates I've done. And I was like, by the way, if you guys haven't seen Andrew Wilson, he's like the most popular debater on the internet right now, absolutely kills it, gets great numbers and everything. And then a few days later, Andrew was on Piers and I was like, oh, and I sent him the screenshot of the email that I'd sent, like beating him up. And then he was like, oh yeah, that's like when they contacted me. So
Really?
yeah. But so I'm sort of like really happy because about that, because Andrew's like the sort of like fearless leader. You know what I mean? So we just sort of
he is.
we kick him into the breach and then we'll all, and he'll just sort of go frontline warrior attack and then we'll all come in streaming behind. So
I think of Andrew. Andrew's like a pit bull, bro. You just let him off the fucking leash and he's there. And you can just get behind him and kind of back up Andrew Wilson as he goes on, man.
Exactly. So he's like that big, like tough guy friend in high school. It's like no one wants to mess with you because you got this big, strong friend.
Yeah, dude, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, you're getting pubbled like, hey, Andrew, this guy wants to debate you. Like,
yeah,
go
exactly.
and
It's
just
like,
kill him.
you mess with me as my big black friend, you know? Just,
Yeah, dude. That's totally true, bro. Like, that's how I've always thought about Andrew Wilson. And it's funny because I've heard things where, like, I've heard this with Joe Rogan. I've heard this with Tim Pool. Have you been on Tim Pool's show?
I'm going on this time next week. What's the day today?
It's
I'm going on the 23rd, so you heard it here first.
Awesome, bro. I'm going to cover that.
That's breaking news. Yeah, sweet.
So Jake, it's funny because from what I've heard, people going on like Tim Pool and Joe Rogan is that a lot of these guys tend to not be so argumentative to the host, for the sheer fact that they want to get back onto the show in future dates, right? And I hear this, well, rumors. Why I'm not involved in the ins and outs, but this is what I've heard. When Andrew Wilson went on with Tim Pool, Andrew couldn't have been more opposite than non-argumentative with Tim Pool. I mean, it made for so many clips online. And I remember thinking in my head, like, oh, will Tim Pool even invite this guy back on after kind of like going really hard on Tim? And from what Andrew said, that no, Tim Pool invited him back on, said, hey, you can come back whenever the hell you want, you know?
Like
Tim Pool really enjoyed that.
Tim Pool loved it. And then the reason I'm going on Tim Pool is because of Andrew's recommendation.
Really?
They got me on because of that. And if it wasn't for that, then I wouldn't be going on. So they really like him. I mean, I think Tim Pool enjoys the pushback. So yeah, dude, for sure. You know what? I think Andrew is like, back in on the analogies thing. I think he's like, have you ever seen that scene in Scarface where he's really drunk and he's getting dragged out of the bar and he's like, you need people like me to say there's the bad guy.
Yeah.
He's like that. Like the whole conservative movement is sort of sitting there like, oh, we've got the best trans people and like, you know, oh, we love women. And then Andrew's just like, you need people like me. Just getting dragged out drunk out of the conservative, you know, establishment.
No shit, bro. No shit.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I kind of think of them that way. Because I think the first time I saw you, it might have been on the Whatever podcast. It might have been, but I could have swore my memory did state that I think I started watching your content before I saw you on Whatever. Because I think YouTube recommended your shit. So I started following you because YouTube recommended it. Then I happened to see you and that other guy, Chase. I remember him. And then that's when
he's another one. He's a good guy.
Yeah. Chase was pretty cool. And then I truly discovered Andrew Wilson on Whatever podcast. And it's funny because when I look at how you deal with the girls on whatever, you could be mean, but you're a lot more what's the word I'm looking for? You're a lot more not
Bit of a
nicer.
soft touch.
Finesse.
Bit of a soft touch.
Yeah.
Finesse,
You're
finesse.
way more finessed with these chicks. And I could tell because I mean, like you stated earlier, you've dated girls outside of the West, right? You've dated chicks that are Russian, etc. And you're in that dating market, right? And with Andrew, it's just like he's finessable, but then his moments where he just goes off on these chicks, like he did with Nala, right? Saying, I don't know if you remember that. That was just totally night and day on how you handle things and Andrew, but yet they're both very productive, you know? But you see a lot of people on the right and Christian conservatives saying that people like Andrew Wilson are like fake Christians. This isn't how you should handle OnlyFans women, right? And this isn't how you should handle certain situations when dealing with these girls, because you're not going to change their mind, right? That's what they're saying. He's being too mean.
Yeah.
What do you have to say about these Christian conservatives on Andrew's style of dealing with these women on these podcasts?
No, they're just wrong. They're just totally wrong. It's because a lot of them are simps.
Yeah.
And the way that Andrew deals with these people is the most effective way, because what those women respond to is put you in your fucking place. That's what they respond to. They don't, if you're one of those guys who's like pussyfooting around, like, oh, tell me about that. Oh yeah, tell me about your story and your experience. Oh yeah, how did you feel about? They will just walk all over you, and they'll tell the cameras, oh, like, isn't he? See how good he is. See how great he is, because he just, he listens to us women. They'll tell you all of that sort of stuff, but then the cameras will go off. They'll get in their car and they'll just laugh their head off at you, because these people are so manipulative. These women that come on those podcasts and everything, but they'll tell you all of that because you're sort of feeding their ego and telling them what they want to hear. But when Andrew speaks to them, it's like a respect. It's like like this guy is sort of like knows what he's talking about, because women inherently like learning off men, but they'll just test you. And even when you're dating girls, you can see this. But if you're somebody who can sort of hold that masculine frame and have boundaries and have your own values and be steadfast in your values, women respect the shit out of that, dude. Women respect Andrew on those shows. They might get mad and try and have all these crocodile tears, but man, is he effective when it comes to that. And I think that I'm effective as well, because I'm no pushover with these girls and everything on the show, but also, like you said, it's a bit more finesse because I'm a little bit more in the dating market, and and I kind of understand modern women and how to sort of speak to them. And I tend to lean in with a little bit like of a softener first, like I'll lean in with like oh yeah, I understand what you're saying about that. Oh yeah, good point. But this, and then you sort of, once you do that, you disarm them, because if you just come at them straight away with some sort of a criticism, then they'll like emotions. Exactly right. Yeah. And they'll take the information, they'll internalize it as an insult, they'll make it about themselves, and then they'll project it back at you. But if you give them like a little compliment or like a little bit of like a massage on the way in, they'll be like, oh, he said something nice. And then like I think they're more likely to sort of listen to what you're saying. Yeah. But yeah, so my goal normally, and this is just purely because I'm interested in doing this, is I like to sort of win over the whole room, no matter who you are. No matter what your sort of disposition is, or no matter what your ideology is, I like to make sure that everyone kind of likes me in the room, and that I'm able to sort of convey my message in that sort of way, rather than it being combative. But I'm happy to get combative if we need to. But I just kind of like the challenge of like winning over people who like should hate me,
Yeah, I bet. It's funny because I think Andrew Tate kind of has that same effect. When he goes into a room, women automatically respect him, but he can also be combative. Like, so in Andrew Tate, when I see him dealing with these girls on panels, he has a finesse similar to you, but then he can kind of go into that pit bull mode to a degree. Like, I think Andrew does it actually worse, to be honest, to be perfectly fair. But I kind of picture you as more of like an Andrew Tate on how, but without the money and the glamour.
Yeah.
And the over-exaggerated words.
Yeah,
you're brokey Andrew Tate, bro. you're the brokey Andrew Tate.
Normie Andrew Tate.
Yeah, dude. But that's what makes you like way more relatable to like dudes like me when I see you on the pod. I'm like, okay, this guy, he's not a multi fucking billionaire. And I'm like, okay, at least I can relate to this dude right here. So it's just like, so I definitely enjoy seeing you on the Whatever podcast, which by the way, you haven't even been on the Whatever podcast in a long while. Is there any plans to get back on this year?
I was speaking to Brian yesterday and potentially, but man, I'm going to be in Bali most of the year this year. I'm going to be based there because I'm trying to get my immigration sorted to the US eventually, which is just such a pain in the ass. But I'm probably going to be in Bali for most of the year. I'm going to be in America as of Saturday for a few weeks. So I'm going to try and line it up, dude, but it's a bit of a tricky one, man. Like, the dates have got to align and everything. So we'll see how we go, but it would be good, man, to get back on. But I'm going to London on the 16th of February to go to the ARC conference with Jordan Peterson. It's like Jordan Peterson's conference where he brings around people from around the world. And so then after that, I'm going to Bali. So I've got a few weeks, but we'll see how we go, man. I'm going to do a few shows over the next few weeks.
Hell yeah, man. Dude, I would have loved to have seen you on Fresh and Fit, by the way. Fresh and Fit would have been a great podcast for you to kind of enter in. It just sucks that you're from Australia, bro, because once you are like a US citizen, you can kind of go on to a lot of these really popular dating shows because, you know, they're stationed here in the United States.
I need to sort it out. It's a tough process, dude.
Yeah, for sure. Instead, we're allowing
over and everything.
Yeah. It just sucks. We're allowing in all these fucking illegal immigrants. And again, I'm in South Texas, so I'm right by the border, and so I've seen this shit. Yeah, dude. And it sucks to see this shit. And I'm like, dude, let's get Jake Rattlesnake in here as a US citizen, and we'd welcome you with open fucking arms, man.
Yes, man.
So it's kind of a shame. It's kind of a shame.
Can we trade me with one of your cousins or something, man? Like,
yeah, go for it, bro. Just get one of these I'll get one of these Mexicans and send them to Australia, and then you come over here, bro.
Perfect, bro. It's a straight swap. We need the labor. Bro. We need the gardeners over here, bro. Something I like about the Mexicans when I go to LA and I see them like, you're up at like 5 or 6 a.m. And I was walking around LA and there's just like teams and teams of these Mexicans all ready to do their gardening for the day, bro. And just like, they've got all of their cousins with them and they're ready to do a good hard day of work.
Yeah, dude. You're totally right. By the way, you are a racist and I'm offended, Jake.
Oh shit, sorry. I should log off.
No, I'm kidding, bro. No, it's funny because I make those types of jokes all the time. Like even amongst us, like in the Hispanic community, you know, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this on YouTube, but we'll call them, you know, we'll call them fucking wetbacks, bro. Fucking, you know, like, and we're Hispanics, bro. But it's just like, yeah, like it is what it is, and us as a community, we don't think of them, we don't really think of them as like Americans. You know, we want to build the wall, we want to get rid of them, and we understand how crucial it is when you have open borders, bro.
Yeah.
You know,
you ever seen Andrew Schultz's bit about Cubans when he says like the Cubans are like the most strict on immigration? He's like they literally still have 1 foot on the boat and they're just like, no, close the border, no, we're full.
After they fucking went over here.
Yeah.
No shit, dude.
Yeah, that's funny shit.
Oh man, that's so good. That's so good, man. You know, okay. I also wanted, because I had some subjects that I wanted to kind of get your reaction. So we kind of went off, which was great. We went off kind of on a cool tangent there of your podcasts and everything like that. Which, by the way, dude, since you said you were going to Bali over there in India, right?
Indonesia, yeah.
Indonesia. Why are you going to spend a whole year over there exactly?
Because I've got to be based somewhere because like I need to show, basically with the business visa, you need to show a bunch of different like receipts and all that sort of stuff. And it's a long process. So I need to be based somewhere. So I'm not just sort of constantly living out of a suitcase. So I'm just going to spend like the year over there, and it's really super cheap and convenient and everything, rather than, because like normally I'm traveling around and moving around.
Yeah.
But yeah, before I come to America, I want to go there. But over the next few weeks, I'm going to be in America and going to be doing some interviews and doing them in London and doing a bit more reality-based podcast, which will be good.
Yeah. Is Peterson on your list, by the way?
Oh, he's a busy man. So I don't think I could try and corner him when I get to the conference and see if he'll do it. But I'll see how it goes.
Yeah, that would be a great one if you can. But a big reason why I kind of bring up Peterson, especially because, you know, I hope that's the case. I wanted to because I know you've seen this because you did a pretty great video on this particular topic, and it's you know this kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier about how well, actually no, I didn't bring it up, but I don't know if you noticed, like, the right now has kind of had some type of division going on as of late, especially after Trump got elected with the B1. Now, you know this story. Obviously, you did a video on this, but for the people that don't know, this is a very interesting kind of take here, and this is what Michaela had to say.
Test people. So there's plenty of flaws to talk about. But I think right before the inauguration, having conservatives argue like amongst ourselves about an H-1B visa issue when we have an open border is silly, especially when it does kind of dredge up what I called the woke right on X. And I know you've scoffed at the term the woke right, but it encompasses these people that are focused on anti-Semitism, Jews, and are they're pro-America, but their idea of America is this white America, similar to, I guess, what everyone's been arguing about for the last 200 years whenever anybody new comes into the country. And I do think it has to do with race. And I think you can see that from comments on Twitter. I mean, Vivek put up a picture. I don't know if you saw it. It wasn't Vivek. It was this horrible woman on Twitter. What's her name? Something Lupus. She's a doctor. She goes, "Oh, what do you guys think about this? Thoughts?" And it's a picture of Vivek and his brown family. And one of the most interacted with comments was subversive brown poop eating parasites. And that's what flooded my feed. And I think I had some irritation because I'm, aligning with conservatives because the woke left has been a disaster for America.
Well, first and foremost,
Okay. So I wanted to get your initial reaction to that. She talks about the woke right, and she describes people that are anti-Semitic and talk about the Jews. I assume that she's talking about people like a Fuentes, like a Gaines, Myron Gaines, Jake Shields. You know the bit here. With Michaela Peterson having this type of opinion and kind of saying like it's the woke right that's the problem, and that because the open borders, we should kind of go forward and unite and just not focus on that. What's your opinion fully when it comes to Michaela Peterson calling? Because I would say, I guess I would be considered a woke right guy. I don't know about you, but I'm not for this H1B1 visas. What's your take on what she had to say here?
Yeah, I think that the term woke right is an extremely
stupid,
unfounded, stupid, yeah, not very well thought out idea, and they make a critical mistake, and it's so obvious the mistake that they're making when you actually look at it. So what they're doing is the people who say woke right are all the classic liberals, right? They're all the people who are trying to gatekeep conservatism because they're like, all right, we want the conservative to be here. But then if you go any further to the right, then all of a sudden we're like, we've got to gatekeep that. We've got to make sure that you can't be any further to the right than we are. Okay, we're like these sort of like centrist sort of people who are classical liberals and who are sort of more enlightened centrists. And then what they do is they'll try and shame anybody who tries to go to the right of them. But they're making a crucial mistake in the sense that conservatism, like we talked about before, is the preservation of tradition, right? So inherently what the right wing is, and this comes from the sort of French Revolution, it's the right bench was the right wing and the left bench was the egalitarian left wing, right? So what the people on the right side were trying to do was trying to preserve the tradition of the monarchy, right? And trying to preserve religious tradition. And what the people on the left were doing was trying to basically subvert all of the tradition and trying to stage an egalitarian revolution. So when you look at the current modern conservative movement, anybody who's to the right of these guys, they call them woke right, because the mistake that they're making is saying that these people are using identity politics in the same way that the woke leftists use identity politics, right? But that's not the case at all, because a part of tradition is country and nation. A part of tradition is your own lineage and your family and your background. There's a really great quote that says, people in the country, it's much harder to it's much more of a conservative place because it's hard to separate them from the God above their head and their father buried beneath them, right? So these are very deeply conservative values, and they're rooted in like things that have lasted the test of time. So to suggest that the conservatives who care about their lineage and their
Right.
race and to care about their nation and
Right.
their values are like the woke leftists is an absurd claim.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's funny because when she's talking about that type of thing, like the first person that comes to mind is Nick Fuentes, right? The man that shall not be named here on YouTube, even though I said
Nick Fuentes.
yeah. I like to call him Voldemort, right? The guy that you shouldn't say the name of.
Yeah.
But it's funny because Nick, one of his biggest controversial takes is he believes that whites should reproduce with whites and stay within the race, right? But that take isn't something that's brand new. If you look at even I believe it was Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali, there's a great interview where
Black
he talks about yes, he's a black nationalist. And he even stated that he wants to marry and have children with a black woman because he wants his kids to look like him.
Yep.
And it wasn't very
and he
controversial.
said that he wants to be around his people.
Yes.
As well. And he said that and it's a completely fine statement to make, is like, none of you white people will ever understand me like my fellow, the N-word that they used to use back in those days. It's now politically incorrect. But and he was like a part of the Nation of Islam, the whole Elijah Muhammad sort of strand of Islamic thinking that black people were sort of historically kings and were black people were sort of blessed with a higher level of melatonin, so they're sort of superior superior to the white man or whatever. Fair play, whatever. If you want to marry into your race, then by all means go for it. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Now, do I think that there's something wrong with Candace Owens marrying a white guy and having kids? No, I don't really think so. No. I think that en masse, I would not really like to see the world become a melting pot. Like, I do like the idea that Anglo-Europeans stay that way in a sense, and that does sort of last the test of time, and that, Poland stays Poland and, Germany stays Germany, because like, if you think about it, dude, like that is what true diversity is. The ability to be able to get onto a plane and go to a different country and to just experience that country for what it is, rather than just this sort of like globalist melting pot. That actually takes away from the diversity of the world. Like, there's nothing cooler, dude, than going to a place like Cambodia and going and visiting the Khmer temples that have been going for thousands and thousands of years. There's nothing fucking cooler than that. And then going the next week and being in Europe in these like ancient places, man, it's dope.
Yeah. And I've seen your channel, Rattlesnake Travels. So I know you've been all around the world. You went to the Pennsylvania rally after Donald Trump, almost got assassinated. And so, I could tell that you're a guy that has spoken to a lot of people outside of just the West, right? And you've gotten different takes on these things. Let me ask you, when you were traveling, did you ever get treated differently because they knew you were an Australian or because you were a white guy?
Dude.
Like, how's that like?
I get racist. Like Latin people are the most racist people in the world, man. Like,
really?
Anyway, Like, I'd say, Latin people and then Japanese and South Korean people are some of the most racist people in the world. Like, in Japan and South Korea, and like, to be honest, like I don't mind it at all, man. Like, when I'm in South Korea, we were doing a video where we were interviewing people on the street. They looked at me like I was a disgusting piece of filth when I tried to talk to them. Yeah, because they're so culturally homogenous over there. Like, they're like 99% South Korean, 99% Japanese, that sort of thing. Right. And these countries are very proud countries that believe that they're superior. Chinese are the exact same. They believe that they're superior to everybody else. But then Latin people, like, there's been heaps of occasions on, like, where they've sort of, they just treat you badly because you're a gringo, and they'll quite often give you a different price because you're a gringo. And then I've had times where people have come up to me and started yelling at me in Spanish, and then I'll be like, listen, like, no habla español, habla inglés, no, okay. And then like I try to like if somebody doesn't speak English and they're coming up to me, normally I'll like use a bit of like sort of body language and hand gestures and speak really slowly, but they won't do that. And then you'll realize that, they actually do speak English, but they're just being like snobby.
They're fucking with you. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. And you get a lot of that, dude. So European countries, they tend to be a lot more friendly and stuff, but
The white countries.
Argentinians are very friendly.
Yeah.
I found Mexicans pretty friendly. Colombians can be pretty off. But yeah, like I just find the Latin people are kind of racist, dude.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure, man. And it's funny because like even in the Mexican community, because you know, I've talked to like old people, right? Like the boomers generation's parents, right? Whatever generation they're called or whatever. But a lot of them, you know, when it comes to race and stuff like that, they don't like the idea of like their kids or their grandkids race mixing, you know?
Yeah. Same with my Italian family. Like they think you got to marry an Italian girl, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Like you have to kind of stay within the race. So this is like really nothing new that Fuentes is really saying. It's just that I guess, well, Fuentes is I believe half Hispanic, but he kind of embraces the white side of things. You know, he really does. Until that one time where he maced that girl for coming on. Yeah. And then the cops asked him like, oh, she said you were a white supremacist. He's like, how? I'm Mexican. He told the cop. So he'll be Mexican when it benefits him.
Yeah, he's got the Mexican card, dude. I'm jealous.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, the Fuentes.
Yeah, but the funny thing is he's another one who's a really good dude off camera, which is really? Like something that people probably wouldn't expect. But I've had a fair few dialogues with him over time, and like he's just a nice dude, man.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. Fuentes definitely, and just like you were talking about how like there's a club, you know, an exclusive club. I think Fuentes really got kicked out of that.
He's the arch nemesis.
Yeah, the arch nemesis of them. Exactly.
They hate him more than they hate the wokest of the woke.
Man, are you sure about that? Really? You would say Fuentes would be like that number one.
He is arch nemesis number one. They hate him. They have invested, I'd say at this stage, millions to try and silence him.
Really?
Yeah. The wokest of the woke, if you think about it, those people are kind of stupid. And when they come and do these like debates and public appearances and stuff, like they kind of get shown up or whatever. The thing is, Fuentes is fucking clever, dude. And he can really throw down. You do. If you're Ben Shapiro, there's a reason why he hasn't debated him yet. Because he would not go well for Ben Shapiro.
No kidding. That is true. Yeah. He's never debated Ben Shapiro. That's for sure.
Yeah. It would be a bad night at the office for Ben Shapiro.
Yeah. No kidding. I've heard Fuentes' story about that, how he was in lines with the Daily Wire at the time with Ben Shapiro, and then he was asking questions about, you know, the little hat people and giving money to that state. So yeah, it's just it's so crazy to me that I guess the sphere of political pundits, there's gatekeeping so high there that's where you know they'll allow you to go ahead and talk about the black people all day, you know, XYZ, go ahead and talk about them, talk about the Mexicans, Hispanics, etc. But if you talk about, you know, little hat people over there in that state, it's super forbidden, you know. And I think Fuentes really opened my eyes to that, especially when Hamas, the attack over there on Israel happened, and Ben Shapiro was kind of he was advocating for war, bro, and that kind of shocked me a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. It was like,
it is a bit like that, dude. And I mean, like, I think the problem is when people go so far into the thing that they think that all the small hat people have some sort of like an ontological evil, and it's like, oh well, this guy, his grandmother's Jewish. It's like, okay, like, so what? Like, oh, this guy, we guys, sorry, we found out that he's got like a great aunt that's a small hat. It's like, okay, just chill out. Like, not everything like revolves around that. Like, there's like some nefarious behavior going on, and like AIPAC is a massive problem, a lobby that's completely controlling a lot of politicians in the United States. And you know, you could say that that state over there that we're talking about has a very, let's say America's like a simp for them. It's unrequited love and unrequited finances and attention that's happening. We'll say that much.
Yeah, no, I agree. By the way, let me just read. I ignored the super. Well, we had two super chats earlier. I just kind of ignored them. But really quick, Siege D, which you know who Siege is. He says
Yep,
showing
came
love
on
for
the
the
show
Jakes.
briefly the other day. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, yeah. He says showing love to the Jakes. Was awesome that Andrew said he loved the Siege on Rattlesnake's Jake Rattlesnake's stream the other day. Yeah, Siege. Shout out to you.
We
And
love the
Misty,
siege, man.
we love the Siege, man. Love that guy. Great supporter of a lot of the Panelverse channels, by the way. And Miss D, who is also from Australia, by the way.
Oh,
She
yeah.
says, shout out to Jake for making us kids from the western suburbs of
Yep.
you know how to read that, right?
Of Melbourne proud. I'm from Footscray, otherwise known as Footscrazy. So, where's Miss Deacon? If she comments where she's from, let me know. Which
Yeah,
part
Miss.
of Western Melbourne.
There you go. Yeah, we'll see what she says on that. But yeah, dude. So going back to that, Candace Owens was kind of like in that same boat. And what I really like about this, and I know you kind of broke a lot of this down. I think I first saw this on your channel because it came up on my feed, and it was, I think you titled it something around cat fights or something like that. But it was really good. And she kind of airs out exactly kind of like the that she doesn't believe it's a race thing. And I think she does a really good job on kind of counteracting Michaela Peterson here.
There's a bunch of racists, you don't like brown skin, while at the same time referring to us as woke was just mind-boggling to me. Just as Steve Bannon said, it means that she hasn't spent the time to understand who and what the American people are, what the MAGA movement is, and why they have concerns about this program. And so to make sure that everybody around the world understands why this is such a big debate, the H-1B visa program is essentially a foreign worker visa that allows employers to hire workers into quote unquote specialty programs, essentially for people who have some sort of a specialized knowledge. But to be clear, the program has been around since 1990, so the results aren't up for debate. We were just simply lied to about what we were told it was going to do, which was to source the top 1% of talent globally. Instead, they're using the program to source cashiers, teachers, janitors, PR people. And just to respond to the point about seeing racist comments on Twitter, I've heard this argument a lot of times from people where they'll suddenly pretend that if you take a position of something and they can find a racist comment beneath it, then you're on the side of the racist.
That's not what I'm doing.
That's just called, I'm just saying that literally since the day that I started my accounts on Instagram, I've been called the N-word from left and the right. It's just welcome to the internet, doesn't mean that these are the positions that are represented. In fact, this conversation that we're having is something that I would almost refer to as MAGA 101. This is like a freshman year class in MAGA college. I've been hearing this debate, have spoken about this debate on stage. I mean, I've spoken at more than 100 universities. And to be frank with you, because I came over from the left, when I first got into this movement, I thought the same thing. I thought, okay, well, I don't understand what the issue is if it's legal migration. But I then listened to people and I wanted to understand where people were coming from. And I opened my mind to what they were saying and realized that they were very much correct. And I think that's sort of where you get into trouble with the MAGA movement, when you just instantly sweep away and condemn everyone and say, well, some people were saying racist stuff about Indians, and so this entire argument now is based on racism. It simply isn't.
Yeah, I love her take on that, Jake. She nailed it on the hammer there, man.
Yeah.
Especially when we talk about how this is not an issue of race at all, right? It's all about how, like you were saying earlier, it's the right kind of using these left-wing tactics on people like Candace Owens, especially when she got fired from the Daily Wire. That was kind of a shocker to me as well, and it really kind of showed like that division between the right that was kind of like precursoring till now. But I have two questions for you. One, where do you stand on the H-1B visas? Exactly. Like, where do you stand on that issue is my first question.
Yeah, I think it's a total scam. And it's a way for companies it's a loophole for companies to get cheap labor. And they know that they can get that from places like India and China. And also you've got the O1 visa, which is a visa that is for actual high achieving people. And it's quite a rigorous process. I've actually thought about going for it myself. And if I had to go for it, I'd show that I'm a journalist and I'd get lots of different references and show that I'm sort of bringing a lot of value to the company, to the country. Well, the company, it is kind of a company. So I'd have to show that I'm bringing that value. But the H-1B, they can just sort of like click their fingers and hire someone and bring them over for slave labor pretty much. And they know that, Indians will come and live in San Francisco and live in 7 of them in a 1-bedroom house and 1-bedroom apartment, and they'll have no worries about it. But like, this exact thing is happening in Australia, and like, people need to open their eyes and look at the effects of this, because Australia has brought in like hundreds and thousands of Chinese and Indian and Nepalese people through a university program loophole, where they've got basically these universities are bringing in thousands and thousands and thousands of these people from Asia, because it's a big money making system. Like, they get lots of grants from the government, and education is meant to be one of our biggest exports, but actually it's costing us a lot of money. And I won't go into the details of that.
Yeah.
But there's all these big rings in places like Nepal and India and China of people who basically will spend a lot of money to get themselves fake degrees. And they've got, in India, it's rife. Like, there's companies that are just doing fake degrees after fake degrees. And
Really?
it's yeah.
So you can buy that shit.
Yeah, you can buy degrees, and there's thousands and thousands of them, so that they can just buy the degree, pretend that they've got a degree in something or other, get the H-1B, and go and work for slave labor.
Wow, dude, are you serious?
Yeah,
Really?
it happens.
Well, that shocks me, because Vivek and Elon really kind of pushed this H1, the H1B, and then we saw, and you did a video on this as well, bro. Donald Trump was against this a couple years back, and then now he's stating, and it was pretty clear. Like, I mean, let's be honest here. Trump did change his mind on that and claimed, that it wasn't the case. I know the debate there that you covered was kind of dishonest on how he was wording things, but nevertheless, like, we did see Trump change his mind on that. Do you think that Elon and Vivek kind of have a huge influence on Trump to the point where he's going to be, supporting the H-1B,
Yeah,
especially after
definitely.
promising us a mass deportation of illegal immigrants? Like,
Yeah, dude, for sure. I mean, like, Trump is that, like, there's no doubt that Trump is a guy who loves the art of the deal, right?
Right.
So if you look, like, Trump was a guy who, like, sort of funded all of his own campaign and all that, really prided himself on that.
Mhm.
And then he went and took like $100 million from Miriam Adelson and then moved the embassy to Jerusalem,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours type situation. Elon
Yeah.
Musk is another one. Buys X, seriously helps Trump out in that regard.
Big time.
Donates a bunch of money to his campaigns. And so if Elon comes up and says, hey, listen, this is how we win in America, and this is how, companies like mine will do well. We need this sort of labor.
Mm-hmm.
Trump will say, okay, no
Let's
worries.
do it.
I'll
Yeah.
I'll deny that I'll deny that I ever said it was bad.
Yeah. And it's funny because the left should love that Trump is saying this stuff, right? But
Yeah.
yet they'll criticize him because of that one little, I guess you want to call lie, etc. But yeah, man. I mean, it's just kind of, I guess that's why for me it was just like, what the fuck's going on here, bro? We wanted to deport these illegals, and now you're supporting. Now, perhaps like a reform of the H-1B could be precise instead of actually accepting it. But
They need
but
to
yeah,
have
I
a
think
minimum amount that they get paid every year. It needs to be like over 100K salary to show that they're actually
yeah.
good.
Yeah, I would say
But,
over
there'd be
100K.
loopholes. There'd be ways around that as well. There'd be ways to like, there'd be a way around it. But who
Yeah.
knows?
Yeah.
The thing
no
is,
kidding.
like, you don't really want Indians and Chinese people to come into your country en masse, because they're not cultures that tend to assimilate very well.
Mhm. Yeah.
Small amounts they will, but when you have mass, like in the western suburbs where I'm from in Footscray, you have just massive enclaves of Indian communities and of Chinese communities. And if you walk around the city of Melbourne, you'd think that sometimes you're in Beijing, honestly. And it's a big problem, dude. And it's absolutely put a stranglehold on our housing market.
Yeah.
Cost of living is going through the roof, because Australia, we had when I was a kid, we had like 21 million people, and now we're like way more, like up towards in the 30s,
Wow. Because of
we're up-
illegals.
No, not illegals. Like, a lot of this is legal immigration.
legal.
Australia is an island, so we've got a lot of ocean in between us and sort of Indonesia and Papua New Guinea and East Timor and these places that are like above us. So to get to us is actually rather difficult, and you have to take a boat, and it's a very dangerous expedition.
Right.
So we've got that under control, but now we're letting the floodgates open by legal immigration. So
Yeah, for sure.
not good.
By the way, Miss D, this one's for you right here. Saint Albans. Yeah.
St. Albans, yeah. That's about half an hour away from me on the I think St. Albans. It's got its own train line past a place called Sunshine, Deer Park, St. Albans, those sorts of places. I used to go to a lot of parties and get myself in a lot of trouble around those areas.
Oh yeah.
She's from the hood. She's from the hood, Miss D.
She's from the hood, man.
Yeah.
That's funny, man. By the way, I wanted to cover this with you because we got the last 15 minutes for you, but I wanted to cover this last story. That's breaking news actually of today. I don't know if you've heard, but Joe Biden recently announced that we're having a ceasefire with Hamas and Israel. Now, if you look up, which I will because I looked it up earlier. Hold on. Sorry.
Yeah, they've got a deal. They've done a deal for the hostages.
Yeah. Trump, the ceasefire in Gaza. If you look at it, and I'll share the screen really quick for you on what we get. We get a lot of stories that Trump and Biden both claim credit for this Gaza ceasefire. So now kind of the narrative moving forward that I'm going to assume that we're going to see tomorrow is the left saying that Trump had nothing to do with the ceasefire happening now 5 days before the inauguration, right? And Trump, if you look at what had happened, I believe it was 2 weeks ago. And I could pull it up and I wanted to show you this here. Donald Trump, sorry, hold on. Let me share this tab instead. There you go. Donald Trump stated this. This was a week ago, apparently.
If those hostages aren't back, I don't want to hurt your negotiation. If they're not back by the time I get into office, all hell will break out in the Middle East. And it will not be good for Hamas, and it will not be good, frankly, for anyone. All hell will break out. I don't have to say anymore, but that's what it is.
So yeah, so now today we had a deal that the ceasefire is going to happen and they're going to trade. The deal is that Israel is going to give up the prisoners that they have for the prisoners that Hamas has, right? It's going to be a trade, etc. So this did happen. Trump has been threatening that. In fact, when he got elected back on November the 5th, a few days after that, Hamas had stated that they're willing to negotiate a deal now. And it happened literally days after Trump was elected. And Trump's administration, his team was involved in this negotiation. And this is even according to Biden, because I saw his entire speech here, that he did state that Trump's team was involved there. And it took him 15 months to get this done. But the moment that Trump's team is involved, it took 2 months, 7 days, a week and 3 days to finally get that ceasefire 5 days before the inauguration. Am I pronouncing that right?
Inauguration, yeah.
Thank you, Jake. But yeah, dude, so I think this is going to be the narrative moving forward here, man. What would you say? What's your thoughts on this, man? Do you think that Trump actually did make a huge impact on ending wars? Are we going to see the end of the Ukraine war in his administration as well?
Yeah, well, I think that it's going to be very interesting, first of all, to see what the Israelis do from here, because the whole thing has been with them. It's like, yeah, release our hostages. And this is why we're sort of like reducing your whole entire home to rubble, like the whole entire thing. And then if you guys just release the hostages. So now that the hostages do get released and this deal happens, it'll just be very interesting to see what happens from there and if there is any more sort of escalation. But we will see.
Yeah.
And then in terms of Ukraine, they've made it very difficult for Donald Trump because they've really escalated it by sending in a lot of those like sort of long range missiles that can go straight into Russia. So that's a serious escalation. But it appears as though, like we're a few days away now from the inauguration. It doesn't look like there's going to be any major attacks. It looks like Putin can hold off, and then Donald Trump will probably get on the phone and have it sorted out within a few months. I'd say that will very likely happen. Is that will be sorted out within a few months.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, I can already tell that the narrative moving forward is going to be that it was Joe Biden that negotiated and got this ceasefire under his administration, which I think is totally stupid.
They can try and say that. I don't think it'll hold much weight.
You already know that's going to be the narrative, bro. We see that. It's funny because there was another clip that I saw earlier of somebody from The View. I believe it was somebody from The View. A lady, fuck, forgot her fucking. She was somebody from The View, but she stated that if Trump actually ends the war in Gaza, that she'll be willing to wear a MAGA hat for an entire show of The View. You know, so I don't think that's gonna happen. I think she's gonna credit it to Joe Biden, of course.
Yeah.
So,
she'll chicken out for sure.
She'll chicken out, bro.
So
but this
dishonest.
is yeah, but this is breaking news, and that is really good news. I'm really happy to hear that. So finally, we're gonna have a little bit more structure moving forward into the administration. Before I let you go, one last question, but before that, really quick, Ghost has a super chat coming in. Thank you so much for the $5 super chat. He says, what's one weird law you have in Australia? For example, here in Michigan, it's illegal for a wife to get a haircut without the husband's permission. I didn't even know that about.
Is that real?
I don't know anything about that.
Well, that's based, if that is true, in Michigan.
I like that
They
thought.
shouldn't be able to get haircuts without their husband's permission. Weird laws. Can I just really quickly look this up on
go for it.
ChatGPT, because I'm certain that there's going to be some weird, funny laws in Australia.
I'm gonna take a quick
go for it.
break on this, and you can take over, Jake.
Okay, cool. What's a weird, funny law in Australia that is very Australian? What's this person's name again? Ghost 1978. The Ghost of 1978. All right. One quirky, uniquely Australian law comes from Queensland. That's where I live. It's illegal to own a pet rabbit unless you're a magician. It's illegal to own a pet rabbit unless you're a magician. This law stems from the significant environmental damage caused by rabbits, which were introduced to Australia and became an invasive species. However, if you're a registered magician, you can apply for a special permit to own a rabbit as part of your act. Only in Australia would invasive species control meet showbiz expectations. ChatGPT thinks it's funny. Yeah, so illegal to own a rabbit in Australia, but that's about as far as it goes in terms of funny laws. Any more?
Did you found one? No rabbits?
It's illegal to own a rabbit in Queensland unless you're a registered magician.
Magician? What the fuck? That is a weird law.
No vacuuming after 10 p.m. in Victoria. Bars must serve alcohol with food in Western Australia.
What the heck?
Taxi drivers must carry hay in New South Wales. Must carry hay? Changing a light bulb might require an electrician in Victoria. You can't disrupt a wedding in South Australia. So the rabbit one was quite funny. I think I'm going to keep that in my under my hat, if you will.
That's a fun fact there. Now, I don't know about the Michigan one. That does sound base. You're right, Jake. That's something that I'll look up. Yeah. I like that law. I like that a lot. Okay, so one last question, Jake. A while back ago, the chat, I just recently revealed that I'm a pineapple on pizza guy. Love pineapple on pizza. I'm all for it. The chat the other day was roasting me, saying that I'm weird. That's for homosexuals. I mean, you know the deal there.
It's rough, man. Like, honestly, it's one of those things that once you come out of the closet as a pineapple on the pizza guy, it's tough, man.
It's tough, bro. I know, man. I think we have it harder than the homosexuals in the 80s,
Yeah, definitely. And that, like, AIDS victims and all that sort of stuff.
Exactly.
Way worse.
We have to deal with real discrimination here. But yeah, so it's funny because I saw you totally demolish Andrew Wilson on this debate. You had a little bit of help from Rachel. For the first time, Andrew Wilson took an L from Jake Rattlesnake.
No, he's actually taken a few L's from me. He's taken an L from me on pineapple and pizza, and he's taken an L from me on the existence of Australia debate.
Oh yeah, didn't he change his mind on that now? Now he actually acknowledges.
Yeah. He won't give me credit, but it was, I think, that from realizing the sort of like breaking down, dismantling, and destroying his worldview sort of led him to that conclusion.
There you go, Jake. That's why you're the future of debates, bro. You took out Andrew Wilson, the pit bull of debates.
I came for the king,
Yeah, exactly, dude. You came for the king, man. But yeah, man, dude, honestly, this was a great conversation with you, Jake. Thank you so much for stopping by, bro. Like, I really appreciate you stopping by for Project VO Pod. I'm surprised that you know that that when I was in your live chat like a week ago or so, you said, yeah, man, just let's hit me up. It was just kind of right out of the blue, and I really appreciate that, man, helping out smaller content creators. Um, Especially a guy that has, a big amount of view count as you do on YouTube, man. So
No, it's my
much
pleasure.
appreciated.
Yeah. Anyone who's subscribes to my channel and is in my live chats and supporting me, I really appreciate that. So I'm always willing to come and like chop it up, and generally people are like kind of cool and it's like a fun conversation. So yeah, I'm happy to do it, man.
Yeah, and I'm really happy to have gotten you on here and kind of break down a little bit of your upbringing, because I haven't seen any video, at least, of you kind of really kind of going in order of how you kind of came to be of Jake Rattlesnake, man. So I'm happy to kind of hear that, man. But anyways, man, thanks so much for stopping by, bro. Thank you for the chat, and thank you for the super chats that everybody kind of came by. With that being said, Jake, can you give out? I just want you to give out your last line, your specialty. Oh shit, your specialty here. The last line of the night goes to you. You already know how you end streams, man.
All right. So thanks everybody for watching, and I'm Jake. This is Rattlesnake TV on Project VO Pod, keeping you armed and